So I'm on a bit of a villain kick right now when it comes to Spider-Man 2, and obviously we know that there's going to be more villains than just Venom and Kraven, and Lizard, you idiot, as confirmed by Bryan Intihar at Summer Games Fest.
I want to talk about the two villains, I think, in the game. There may be more.
There are more. There are more out there, I promise.
So I wanted to go through and talk about my hopes and little wish list of Spider-Man villains I hope show up in this game. Right off the bat, I'm going to start us off with Mysterio. Mysterio would be such a damn cool villain to implement in this game, having to deal with all of his illusions and not being able to tell what is real and what isn't. Imagine the cool things Insomniac could do with something like that just for gameplay of like a boss battle or something. And not only that, but like the story implications that could happen. What if Mysterio makes Peter see Miles die in combat or something like that? That would be heart-wrenching to watch, especially if Peter has the symbiote on, because let me tell you, that boy would not let that slide. And this is all only assuming that Mysterio would be part of the actual main narrative of the story, like how Shocker was in the first game. But I don't even necessarily need him to be part of the main story. I would love it if he was just like a silly little side mission and you had to deal with his illusions that way. And of course, we know Mysterio already exists in this world because someone was wearing his costume at the costume Halloween party in the first game, so it might be a little bit harder to convince us as players that Peter is actually falling for Mysterio's illusions. Next up, I would also love to see Sandman. Sandman is very similar in the way that he is already present in this universe. We know that because Peter has a vial of Sandman that he's kept in one of his backpacks around the city. But also I want to note, because a lot of people on Twitter seem to think that that is entirely Sandman, but I think that is just a piece of Sandman in that vial. There's no way all of him fits in that tiny little vial. I think a Sandman boss battle would be not only really awesome gameplay wise, but very visually creative as well. Plus, I don't think we've gotten a proper Sandman boss battle since like Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. But imagine like we start off chasing Flint around the city and he's regular like person size, but then as we follow him, he picks up more sand along the way somehow and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, culminating in a giant boss battle against a giant sand monster. Right here, I want to take a second to tell you guys a villain I don't want to see in this game, and that is fucking Rhino. This man got all the screen time in the first fucking game, and we had to fight him in Miles Morales, bro. I am done with this big fucking Russian tank motherfucker. At least for a little bit. He could come back sometime later, I don't really care. The next villain I want to see in this game is Beetle. Now, you could make an argument if you know Beetle that he's not really a Spider-Man villain. I mean, his first appearance was in a Strange Tales comic fighting Human Torch. But to be honest with you, Beetle has fought multiple Marvel heroes in the past, Spider-Man being one of them, probably one of the more prominent ones. And the last time we saw him in a video game was, I believe, Ultimate Spider-Man, unless there was like some suit that you could use of Beetle that I remember in one of the Amazing Spider-Man games, maybe? I could be tripping though. But I think Beetle would work perfectly as sort of like a side mission type villain, similar to how Taskmaster was in the first game. Someone that could pop up repeatedly that you'd have to take on, and then he keeps managing to slip through your fingers somehow. He also later eventually turns into a hero, so that might be cool to sort of set up and play with. This next one I don't necessarily need in the game. I feel like it would feel very similar to the Sandman boss battle, but Hydro-Man. At least the way it works in my head right now, it would be very similar. They're just giant monsters of their respective elements trying to take Spider-Man down. But I'm mostly just putting him in here because I feel like Hydro-Man doesn't get that much love. We never really see him in much of anything. We saw a version of him in Spider-Man Far From Home, but even then that wasn't really him. I guess he's more like an honorable mention on this list. This next one would be more of a sort of setup for his eventual villain arc in like Spider-Man 3, but Alistair Smythe. I think putting Alistair Smythe in this game, having him go through his entire arc of setting up the Spider Slayers and everything, might be cramming a little bit too much into this game, unless Insomniac already has that plan and already has built that out. But I feel like mixing that with Kraven, Lizard, and Venom would be a bit much. So I think just introducing Alistair Smythe in this game and having that sort of promise of maybe in the third game he creates the Spider Slayers and we'll have to fight them and take them down eventually would be pretty cool. And some returning villains that I think are rather likely are going to be Kingpin and hopefully Dr. Octopus. Obviously, we saw both of their images on that tablet that Kraven is holding in the gameplay trailer, so it's pretty likely that they are eventually eventually going to show up in some capacity in this game. But I bring it up specifically because I would love to see how Peter, wrestling with the symbiote and wrestling with what that's doing to him, try to confront Doc Ock again and try to hold back all that anger that he has and see if he blames him for Aunt May dying. I feel like that could make for a really interesting scene in the game. As for Kingpin, he's definitely going to play some sort of role in this. He might even break out of prison if I had to guess in this game, and we'll have to really confront him again in the third game. But the Kingpin of crime has to be around at some capacity, with Kraven trying to come over with his gang and not take over the city necessarily, but in the process of hunting down all these bigger creatures and bigger villains and Spider-Man, Kingpin's gonna want to hear and try to keep that under control best he can from prison. But yeah, let me know your guys' list of villains you would love to see return in this game in the comments below. I want to read all of them. Go in detail. I want to know why you want them to come back, how you want them to play into the story, if you want them to be a side character mission type thing, or just part of the actual main story. If you made it all the way to the end here, I appreciate you so much. I hope you have a great day, and I guess that's it.